I have with me Tim Mostert. He's a cartoonist, author, and art historian. He's based in South Africa. His latest books are Know Your Nation, South Africa, and Reasons to Vote for the ANC. And I wanted to talk to Tim. He's written about the president, Trump productivity as president, Obama portrait in South Africa. Tim, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Jesse. Great to be here. Hi from South Africa.
Right. So, Tim, in South Africa, it's 4:30 in the evening, right?
That's right. It's 4:30.
That's amazing. And how was your day so far?
My day's been good. I've been drawing cartoons all day and writing all day. I've had a very busy day.
Right on. You write about President Trump. You call Trump a 24-hour-a-day guy, a workaholic who requires very little sleep. Others include singer Madonna and the latest artist, Michelangelo. You said that Trump also fearless. What positive effects have you seen so far with this president?
Jesse, Trump is a bulldozer. He's a force.
Yeah.
He's got this supernatural energy that defies logic. I find Trump to be remarkably productive. He's totally focused. He understands goals. He's goal oriented. He understands deliverables. And we haven't seen anyone like this before in power. We've never seen anyone who understands how to get things done on a large scale day after day.
And so where is this energy coming from? You're right. Most human beings don't have it. Where is it coming from?
Well, Winston Churchill had the same thing. And that's, Winston Churchill used to work 20 hours a day. He would phone his secretaries at 2 o'clock in the morning with ideas, things he wanted to do. I mentioned that Renaissance artist, Michelangelo, he worked 20 hours a day, every day for 65 years. And you get certain people, they just have this innate ability to not need sleep. And when they're awake, they get a lot done.
Are they born that way?
They seem to be. They seem to be what I call freaks of nature. I like to work with people who are freaks of nature. Opera singers, musicians, great artists, animators. Some people just have this work ethic where they get a lot done. And Trump is one of those guys.
I call President Trump the Great White Hope. Another thing I love about this man is that when his enemies attack him, the children of the lie, the liberal media, the Democrats, right or Republican, and even Oprah last night on 60 Minutes, this president, he doesn't mind, attacking back. He doesn't lay down and take it. He's not afraid of what people would think about him if he defended himself. He's not worried about the media. And I have so much respect for that.
I do too. And we're not used to that. That's something new. To have a politician who stands for the values that he stands for, who's willing to fight back against the hard left, against the media, it's very, very refreshing.
I know in South Africa you write about that the family, for the most part, doesn't exist anymore. And first I want to know, do you think having a good father and mother, raised by a good father and mother, such as this president did, he was raised by a good parent, do you think that impact the way he is today?
Of course. He learned a lot of business skills from his father. He learned a lot of social skills from his mother. They instilled in him a lot of family values. He has respect for the family units.
Yeah.
He learned to work. He learned to work with blue collar people on building sites. He's not afraid to spend time with people who are less educated or more marginal.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. He's not even full of himself. He's willing to spend time with the taxi drivers, the builders, the bricklayers, and he talks like them. I find that very refreshing.
I do too.
But yeah, look, everything from what you get from your parents. That's the most cardinal thing you need in your life is your relationship with your parents.
Tell us about when it comes to parenting. Tell us about what's happening in South Africa concerning parents.
Well, South Africa is going through a real transition because the family unit has been breaking down because of AIDS. So you have a lot of families in the townships that have lost both parents. They've lost their father and their mother. So we have an epidemic of something called child-headed households in the townships, where a household is run by an 11-year-old girl looking after her little brothers and sisters.
That's amazing.
There are no parents. Everybody's died. The aunts, the uncles, the older cousins, and it's a very vulnerable situation. A friend of mine has a trust called the James 127 Trust, which is just focused on looking after these child-headed households in the townships. So you've had the family unit breaking down the way it has in the U.S. and other countries because of the welfare state, where there are no men around, or they abandon their families. And then compounded with that, we've had the epidemic of AIDS, which has decimated families in the townships. So it's a real problem. And part of the focus that I have now with my cartoon character, Speedy's like a black Homer Simpson. He teaches his son things in a series I'm doing now called Learn with Speedy. And he teaches his son things like how to brush your teeth, how to tie a tie, democracy. And so now the next generation of children in South Africa see a father spending time with his son, and it's very, very positive. And that's what we need. We need positive male role models.
Yeah. This epidemic of AIDS, is it predominantly with the blacks in South Africa?
It mainly is. Look, the black community is 88% of the population in South Africa. So it's kind of flipped from the way it is in the States. You know, I mean, in the States, the black community is what, 12%? Right. I don't know what the latest figures are, but it's about 12%. Here, the black population is 88% of the population.
Tim, before we run out of time, tell the folks how to get your books, check out your cartoon, how to keep up with what you're doing.
Know Your Nation is available on Amazon, as well as Reasons to Vote ANC. And by the way, Reasons to Vote ANC is completely blank inside. So if they order that book, yeah. And then if they want to see my cartoons, the best website is www.speedyshow.com. They can see the animation. They can read an archive of comic strips from the newspapers. Speedyshow.com. That's the best website.
I highly recommend it. When I read this about reason to vote for ANC, right away I thought to myself, there's no reason to vote ANC. And so I'm glad you clarified that.
You'd enjoy the book.
So let's go back to the situation there in South Africa due to the destruction of the family, no parents. Have things gone out of control as a result of that, as far as crime and all that stuff?
Yes, they have. Crime is a huge issue here. Crime is a massive problem here. You have to look after yourself, and you have to take precautions. The private security firms in South Africa are bigger than the army and the police put together.
Amazing. I read a report once that the blacks are attacking the whites there, and in some cases running them out of the country, and that the whites have to put up walls around their property and have security guards, people there to protect them. Is that true?
Well, that is true to a certain extent. What's happened is a lot of suburbs have simply put up gates or a wall around the entire suburb to keep crime out. But look, you know, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I grew up in Englewood. You know, I was used to a lot of crime and a lot of racial tension. But I grew up in a black church. As I grew up sort of as a black person in a black church, and they called us a snowball in a coal mine, my family. And when I came to South Africa, I found that the race issues here were actually easier to deal with than the ones in America, partly because in South Africa you're exposed to different races, because you have people that work in your house, or you might have someone look after your children who's black. And so a lot of my friends, they speak Zulu or they speak Xhosa. They speak a black language because they grew up with a black nanny or a black housekeeper.
Right.
And so they they don't have the animosity that we have in the States, because in the States, a lot of the racial tension comes from not having contact with one another. And a lot of what I'm doing with my books is all about nation building. If we learn about each other's cultures and histories and interests, then a person that isn't a statistic or just a color, they're an interesting, unique individual, like God made them.
Yeah. You know, I grew up on a plantation down in Alabama under the Jim Crow laws. And because we had fathers and mothers, grandparents, we were taught to work at an early age. We were taught to treat people the way we would like to be treated. We didn't have this so-called race issue going on as we do today, because black people at that time was, for the most part, a moral people. And we didn't have a lot of contact with white Americans, but because of respect of God and what's right, we still got along with white Americans. And it wasn't until the so-called civil rights movement started, the government became the daddy, and the men left their homes when the blacks start to go out of control. And they are suffering today, not due to the lack of contact with white people, but they are brainwashed, dumbed down, and demoralized. They've been lied to, and they don't have love in their hearts because they don't have the love of their fathers. And so that's what the primary problem is. And it's not going to change until we can turn black people back to God and back to family.
No, that's right. That's very true. And, you know, a lot of the culture that you grew up with in the South is very similar to what we have here in South Africa, where the races mingle more, and there isn't an outright animosity because they work together.
Right.
It's true that the whites are usually the bosses and the blacks are subservient, but that's changing a lot now as well. There's a massive, what they call black diamond middle class in South Africa, upper middle class, where you see black people with, you know, Mercedes and Bentleys and beautiful, they live in the beautiful houses in the suburbs now. But the focus is still the need to restore the family. The family needs to be restored, and we need to restore a walk with God, a respect for God.
Yep. The children of the lie here in this country, they blame it on gun, they blame it on racism, they blame it on everything but what it is, and we're working hard to get the truth out there. Tim, one last thing before we run out of time. You criticize celebrities like Meryl Streep for being preachy. What's the difference between a great preacher like MLK and Billy Graham and a preachy actor?
Well, you know, preaching is a gift. You know, when you read Paul's writings where he lists the gifts, one of the gifts is preaching, and that's a public gift, and that's a gift we've lost. You know, I grew up with preachers.
Yeah.
A lot of when you go to churches now, you hear motivational speaking and you hear pep talks. You don't hear a lot of preaching. But when you had people like Martin Luther King or Billy Graham, they preached. They had a power that came through the word as they spoke, and an energy. Now that's putting forth a word. That's putting forth a word that changes people's hearts and changes people's minds. Being preachy is just being whiny. It's just someone complaining.
Yeah.
So what's happening now is people are just complaining because they don't like what's going on. They don't like the fact that they're not in charge. So they moan and they complain. When I said Meryl Streep was preachy, I meant she was moaning too much. She's moaning about things because she can't get her own way. But preaching, good preacher changes your life.
That's right. Tim, it's an honor to meet you. Thank you for coming on. We're going to have you back.
Thanks, Jesse. Great to meet you.